Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What's the closest you've ever come to dying? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Nearly drowned after falling while on day 500 of being drunk and trying to shower. I fell, smacked my head on the faucet, broke my bottle, and passed out. Woke up shortly after trying to breathe in water, managed to sort of fling myself half over the side. Really bad idea given the recent head trauma, puked and passed out. Woke up later utterly freezing in a bathtub full of water, tequila, glass shards, blood from a cut on my head, and the glass digging into me, piss and shit. Flopped myself over the tub wall, puked again, kinda got under the drip catch rug and passed out. Woke up nauseous, freezing, and shaking a day or so later. I think. Puked again, saw my dogs licking my puke, crawled to the kitchen and knocked the dog food over so it spilled, then crawled over to the pile of dirty clothes and snuggled in. Woke up a day or so later. Felt worse, and was super shaky but so thirsty. I drank from the dog's water dish, crawled back under clothes, and the dog came to lay with me and I cried. Woke up a while later, felt like utter shit, and it hurt to move. Shaky, and weirdly amped up, but in a bad way. Puked, tried to get more water, dogs were out. Fairly sure I refilled it from the toilet, but it gets more like a fever dream and less specific. Cuts from the glass were infected from being in shit soup and tore them whenever I crawled. Didn't have insurance, so I just kinda dealt with it. Scrubbed the cuts with a dish sponge from the floor, and then dumped hydrogen peroxide on them. It hurt a lot. Like it was a bad time in general, but I remember how much that hurt. It took nearly a week before I could stand. The poor dogs had been locked in and had pissed and shit everywhere. It smelled soaking bad. Got cleaned up as soon as I could. It took a week and was utter horror. Smeared shit in the carpet with blood from me crawling. The pile of clothes that I was so happy for the warmth was festering. Long story short, if you have a drinking issue, get help. Seriously. Any help is better than none. Because that drunk thought of, how could this get worse? It effing can. Makes slightly better choices now, so you won't have to try and treat the festering wound you got from a broken glass after sleeping in shit soup. By all rights, I should have been effing dead from some portion of this shit show, but I didn't. So now I'm a cautionary tale and a lucky F. Road trip with an ex and a couple of good friends in my dad's car. I'd driven the car to the destination with one hand, my hand being broken from a sports-related injury and wearing a cast. Ex wanted to drive us home, so I fell asleep in the back seat with no seatbelt on. Woke up hearing screams and feeling dizzy, plus my broken hand was just killing me at that point. Opened my eyes and saw everything around me smashed to bits. No window, roof collapsed, couldn't open the door, and there was a weird silence around us. The cast was broken due to me hitting the window. Luckily my hand took the bigger hit than my head on that window. We rolled 5 times, 3 times on the tarmac, and once fully airborne. This all according to witnesses of the crash. The craziest part of all this is that no one got seriously injured. Whiplashes and small cuts are caused by the flying glass. I broke my hand a bit better and sprained my ankle and back. What a ridiculous injury compared to the situation we landed in. Wear your seatbelt, people. I, female, OD'd in May of 2012. I had just done my first jail stay of 78 days. I made it 56 hours after getting released. I was 23 years old and roughly 6 years into my opiate addiction, heroin being DOC. I was less than a year into my IV drug use, though. I was with 2 friends, both female. The driver was on pretty strict felony probation and was afraid her PO would somehow find out about all of this and got paranoid. If it would have been solely up to her, I would have been rolled into a ditch. The other girl I was with convinced her to drop me off at the emergency room. Instead of dropping me off at the door, they put me on the side of the building. When I regained consciousness, I was surrounded by 9 medical professionals Only one of those people's faces still shows in my mind, though. The nurse to the left of me, she was the first person I saw. She had a life support tube in her right hand, and I watched her eyes fill up with tears as she said to me, "Sweetie, you have a purpose here on earth. Please see your worth." And I was proceeded to be told by the administered 4 doses of Narcan, and I had flatlined for 13 minutes. The only reason I received medical attention is because of a homeless man who found me on the side of the building. None of it makes sense to me. I have the records from the incident, hoping those would help me understand why I'm still here today. I just celebrated 8 years in recovery from drugs and alcohol. I may never understand why I was given another chance. I've had way more than just that incident. I'll forever be grateful for this life of mine today, though. I've always wanted to be able to meet the person who found me and helped save my life that day. I was riding a motorcycle doing around 45 to 50 miles per hour along a major street in Austin that had a median. It wasn't much past sunset, but street lighting was excellent, and my headlamp was on bright. As I passed a strip mall, the driver in the car that was sitting patiently to turn into the street decided to turn left in front of me. He simply didn't see me, and when he did, his eyes got really wide and he hit his brakes. This left his car directly in front of me. I was 20 years old, so I actually had the reflexes to manage this for about 1,000th of a second. I considered putting the bike down, but instead I severely swerved left, hoping to clear his front bumper. As I crossed in front of him, I looked down and saw my foot pedal clear past by about the width of my foot at 45 miles an hour. This put me on the wrong side of the median, but fortunately there was no opposing traffic. I reached the next break, crossed back over, and then pulled off to the nearest parking lot. Got off the bike, sat down, and shook uncontrollably for a while from the adrenaline. Sold the bike the following week, and I've never ridden a motorcycle since. Died for 2 to 3 minutes after being hit head-on by a semi in a car accident. Was resuscitated in helicopter on way to hospital. The femoral artery was severed, the lungs and liver punctured, all ribs in 2 places, the sternum in 2 places, both collarbones, both arms and wrists, and a couple of vertebrae in the neck were broken, and the legs were broken in multiple places, plus the ankles, resulting in a traumatic brain injury and coma for a couple of days. After just 6 days in the hospital, I was released. It took only 5 months to go from completely dependent on others to being in a wheelchair, then a walker, then walking. It only took a year after the wreck to feel almost completely normal and physically functioning properly, besides some neuropathy. The brain injury has caused some speech, memory, problem-solving abilities, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Physically capable as ever, though, for the time being. Back in 2009, I consumed 8,260 milligrams of DXM over the course of 4 days, triggering a psychotic drug-induced episode following a week-long psychosis. SparkNotes version. I struggled with substance abuse in my early teens to young adulthood. I had been consuming DXM, marijuana, and psilocybin regularly over the course of 3 months when I was 17. During spring break, I drank about 10 bottles of cough syrup, DXM, during a 4-day period. I'd built up a tolerance during that time, and it just wasn't doing anything, so I kept taking more every day. The 5th day it hit me all at once, like a delayed reaction, and my cheese slid off my effing cracker. I was having a conversation with my father when this episode set in. I started rambling and saying absolutely nutty squirrel shit things, so my father called 911. The rescue squad and state police showed up promptly. I was asked a series of questions, and it was determined that I was absolutely out of my effing gourd and was walked out to an ambulance to be shipped to the hospital. Upon arrival in the hospital, my heart rate was 245 beats per minute. I was given Ativan and told to chew it up immediately. Once my heart rate slowed down to 175, I was then moved to a different floor and put under observation. I was asked many different times if this was intentional. It truly wasn't. The doctors and staff didn't believe me, because I apparently did about 2.5 times the LD50. I thought I was in the hospital for 3 days. Turns out it was an entire 7 days. I was released, and I had a very hard time concentrating or even holding on to a thought without getting lost for months after this. I hardly spoke for about a year and a half. It took me about 2 years to get back to somewhat normal. This entire experience changed me even to this day. I'm not the same person I was before this happened. I've not taken a large dose of DXM since this happened. I still can't even take a normal dose of it when I'm sick. Even a small dose, my brain goes haywire. I continued to use other drugs for about 6 years after this experience. I just celebrated 9 years clean 2 months ago. Great. Well, it sounds like a rough ride, and you came out on the other side, which is great. Keep it up, one day at a time, right? When I was a child, I was sitting in the back seat of a pickup, no seatbelt, after school in someone else's truck. My mom was sitting passenger, and this woman was her friend driving. 3 of us in the back. The music was just blaring, and we were all having a good time. I remember standing or leaning forward in the seat because I wanted to change the song. I don't know how I didn't realize. Maybe there was too much going on, or no one actually noticed somehow, but we were about to cross the railroad tracks. I turned my head just as we went over them, and I was locked in with the effing train about to hit us full speed. It wasn't until I saw the train dead on passing by it and felt it shake by the truck that I realized we almost died. We were about 2 feet in front of a full-speed train, no caution thing down. But I do remember seeing other vehicles stopped on the opposite side, and I remember seeing the train and hearing my mom screaming for a friend to speed up. My mom started flipping shit, and I don't remember much else after. I forgot this memory existed until I drove over a set of tracks a month ago and questioned where the F the bar thing was. There are still active trains in my hometown, but not in the city I work in, so I was caught off guard with the lack of safety and memory. My mom and her friend were not sober, so the experience makes sense, but it also makes sense why I have such a deep-seated fear of railroad tracks. LMAO. 2020 peak pandemic. Was riding a Peloton and had heart failure. Wife heard a crash and checked on me. Was on the ground with feet connected to the bike still. She couldn't get my feet disconnected and performed CPR until paramedics showed up 15 minutes later. Couldn't get a pulse to stay after multiple defibrillation shocks. Took me to the hospital and my whole body started shutting down. Had kidney failure and brain swelling. They put me in a coma for 3 days and told my wife I wasn't going to make it. She'll never forgive them for telling her that. Came out of the coma 3 days later with a tube in my throat, not knowing what the fuck was going on. They had an iPad on FaceTime in front of me with my wife and parents watching because no one was allowed in the hospital at that time. The doctors asked me some standard questions like, is your name Buffalo Farts 123? I hope not. Is it 2020? And others I can't remember to gauge how my brain was after the swelling, asking me to nod yes or no. I'm a huge Bills fan, I get that. And the nurse didn't really understand football and asked me if I liked the Patriots. I gave her the middle finger, and I'll never forget hearing my dad screaming, "That's my boy." Spent 21 days in the hospital during the pandemic. The only plus side was the NBA bubble happened at the same time. So much basketball all day, every day, the whole time. Never found out the true cause, and now I live a less athletic life with an ICD in my chest. Took me a while to not be angry at life, feeling like I was robbed of all my favorite hobbies like hockey and basketball. In a much better place mentally now, but still get waves of depression from it. Last note, my wife is a fucking badass who saved my life and sprang into action without a minute. Held down the fort with the 3 kids while I was on the brink of dying and never gave up on me. Got COVID at 34 weeks pregnant. Woke up in the middle of the night gasping for air and feeling like I was fading in and out of consciousness. Went to the hospital. My heart rate was 175 resting and wouldn't come down. My oxygen was 87 and my blood pressure was through the roof. It turns out on top of COVID, which had turned me into pneumonia, I also had pre-eclampsia and my placenta was failing. Spent 2 weeks getting the pneumonia under control while constantly monitoring my baby. Had to have an emergency induction just before 36 weeks because my son was in distress and his heart was stopping. We were both too weak for a traditional induction, and for some godforsaken reason, my doctor wouldn't do a C-section, so they induced me with a bulb and made me labor for 2 days. My son's heart would not stabilize, and every 20 minutes or so, a whole slew of staff ran in to flip me around and jostle him back too. The epidural didn't work, so I kept blacking out from pain, and my lung capacity still wasn't back to normal, so I kept passing out. Like, I just am missing massive chunks of time from those 2 days. Sometime on day 2, I think, I got this intense sense of doom, which is a bad sign. My partner noticed because my eyes just glossed over, and I got this 1,000-yard stare. At that moment, my heart rate went to 200, my blood pressure bottomed out, and my baby's heart stopped completely. The nurse started screaming for help, and like 20 people rushed in. I couldn't talk, and I was seizing up. At this point, my vision starts fading around the edges like a vignette, and my gut, I just knew it was over. The intense fear and doom I had been feeling stopped abruptly, and I just felt cold and tired. I physically could not keep my head up or open my eyes. I have no idea how long I was out after this or what they did to me. My partner said they gave me some injection of something to help me, and were like manhandling my belly to get my baby back. When I came back around, a doctor was in my face yelling, "Can you hear me?" and rubbing my arm so hard it hurt. I was honestly shocked I woke back up. The doctor looked at me and said, "Things got pretty scary back there, but I think we're out of the woods for now. But we have to get this baby out now. If he isn't out in the next hour, we're doing a C-section." They turned my Pitocin up and broke my water. After that, I only pushed for 5 minutes because I just needed it to be over, and I could feel literally everything. I gave it all I had. Turns out I had had a seizure and intense cardiac distress from preeclampsia. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital after that recovering. My son was miraculously fine, despite being a little over a month early, having a true knot in his cord, placenta failure, and multiple episodes of not having a heartbeat. He's 2 now, and you'd literally never know he almost died. So, anyway, COVID turned into pneumonia plus preeclampsia, a bad combo. I almost died from pneumonia, and then again from the preeclampsia 2 weeks later. It was traumatic. So my family and I were traveling to the mountains, and we were looking for a car to book for private travel. Suddenly, 2 guys came in with their car saying they'll drop us to our destination, which was basically a 3-hour ride. We agreed, and halfway through, my dad somehow realized that these 2 guys had never been here before, and had no experience in driving on high congested roads. After about an hour, we reached a slope, and the car stopped and started moving backwards. I remember looking down from the window, and all I saw was smoke because of how high above we were. The car moved closer and closer to the cliff, and I remember being brain dead while I could literally hear the muffled voices of my mother and sister shouting and crying for help. It was surreal. The 2 guys handled it somehow. We were about an inch into the cliff before one of the 2 guys got off and put random stones behind the tires. I know it doesn't sound scary, it does, and often happens a lot, but for me, it being my first time experience, this was truly horrific, considering I'm afraid of heights, and this happened at a tall slope with literal smoke and shit. It was scary. When I had a shot of tequila, I found out within a minute that I'm deathly allergic to agave, and was blessed to have an EMT sitting on the other side of me from the friend who bought me and showed me how to do my first tequila shot. Almost immediately I knew something was wrong, and said it out loud that something wasn't right. The guy who looked over called an ambulance, and I was told fairly quickly he was giving me CPR. My throat never closed up like some reactions, thankfully, but my lungs just quit wanting to inhale and exhale like my diaphragm just unplugged itself. And I remember being petrified, because no matter what I did, I couldn't breathe in or out at all. Agave is becoming quite popular as a healthy form of sweetener. I can't get mixed drinks at bars because there are mixers that have it in them. Or drinks could have a splash of tequila or something with agave. I have to be careful of salad dressings and marinades because I found some with agave in them. On a small twin-engine plane, age 16 with 4 passengers, my family, That pilot took off from Dallas-Fort Worth about 10:30 p.m. We missed our connecting flight. My dad had to get back to work in the AM anyway. 10 minutes after takeoff, looked out port side window and engines on fire. Pilot was sharp, turned off the engine, plane nosedived, but he regained control, crash landed at Love Field or near in the surrounding field, as luckily it was super close. We were unscathed, but scary and scarred. Worst part, my dad had to get to work still. All we got on another similar plane around 2 a.m. and made it home fine. In retrospect, probably best thing to get back on the horse then, or might have never wanted to fly in a small plane again.